Mixing with Mike, plugin of the week is the Waves TG Mastering Chain. This video is going to be demonstrating audio examples. If you're interested in going through all the features that are available in the plugin, then look for the features video, which should be just prior to this one. Okay, so what we have here is the input section. We have input gain control. We have a tape equalizer here, so this will give you those conversions as I was telling you earlier about the NAB and IEC. Let's start by turning the module on. Let's do a little monitoring of this first, so just so you can hear a little bit of what's going on. Part-time lovers, part-time friends. Biggest time we got full-time. So that may or may not be useful for certain things, but it's in there for posterity's sake, I guess. The transpose is just the left-right reversal. Part-time lovers, part-time friends. Biggest time we got full-time. Because the side guitars are basically the same, you're not going to hear much difference there. This is a phase inversion for the left or right. Balance control. Part-time lovers, part-time friends. Biggest time we got full-time. Nice and clean. And then this is an odd one here, the phase invert. This is kind of interesting because if you play with this on effects tracks, you can get some really unique effects that kind of come out here, because 90 degrees is not a normal phase inversion. It's usually 180. Part-time lovers, part-time friends. Biggest time we got full-time. So you can see here, you can like take, especially on an effects chain, in terms of, this is just solving problems for issues of tapes that would come into the studio that they would need to transfer, where maybe the phase or something wasn't quite wired exactly correctly. All right, let's move on to the tone section. All right, so with the EQ section, otherwise, in the input stage, all the harmonic distortion and everything is emulated kind of coming through. But other than that, having it in, let's just kind of focus on setting up like a basic equalization here. So here, let's just say that we wanted to boost a little bit of top end. I'll just kind of use a high shelf, and we'll kind of go through some of the options here. Part-time lovers, part-time friends. Biggest time we got full-time. You went your way, and I went mine. Nice, clean, very open, airy sound. Here, maybe let's just try to put in a little bit of thump here, down here. Maybe what I can do here, instead of using a low shelf, I'll use like a sharp EQ. Maybe I can focus in on the kick a little bit. Part-time lovers, part-time friends. Biggest time we got full-time. You went your way, and I went mine. Tripping slowly down the road, walking a line. And all these cars are passing me by. If I wanted to heft up the low end here, I could probably go down here like around 180, do like a little bit of a dip to kind of focus that low end bump. Part-time lovers, part-time friends. Biggest time we got full-time. You went your way, and I went mine. Tripping slowly down the road, walking a line. And maybe here I can push a little bit more mid-range and focus it in there just a touch. Part-time lovers, part-time friends. Biggest time we got full-time. So I did a blunt one, so it covers a pretty broad range of frequencies. It's centered around 1.45 kilohertz. Part-time lovers, part-time friends. Biggest time we got full-time. So as I was talking about, I'm going to skip over to the filters. So that works pretty good, but I want to show off a little bit of the MS stuff here. So maybe on the filters here, I'll roll off a little bit of the low end on the sides coming from the guitars. Let's just start at 80 hertz and let's just see what that is. So we'll leave the low end just as is in the center. 40 hertz is probably a little bit high for a mastering situation, but let's start there.
Part-time lovers, part-time friends. Think it's time we got full-time again. You went your way.
Maybe eats away a little bit too much at the guitars. Let's try 63.
Part-time lovers, part-time friends. Think it's time we got full-time again. You went your way, and I went mine. Tripping slowly down the road.
It does focus the bass and the kick drum a little bit more, but I'm not sure I like the effect of it. Let's just try also just a little filter on the top end in the center, maybe to focus the vocal a little bit better.
Part-time lovers, part-time friends. Think it's time we got full-time again. You went your way, and I went mine. Tripping slowly down the road, walking a line. And all these cars are passing me by, and all these streets they seem like a blur.
Okay, so these are, it sounds like these are pretty soft filters. There's no indication anywhere of what order they are. So they're probably pretty soft, like a first order 6 dB per octave or 12 dB per octave. They don't sound that heavy, so that's probably why that 60 or 80 was cutting in too much of the guitars. Because if that's the kind of a crossover knee point, then the frequency's probably zipped up a little bit too high. 40 sounded a little bit better, but I like the way this focuses the vocal there in the middle. So let's move over to the limiter section and kind of investigate this a little bit. Okay, so there are 3 basic types you can select: the original and the limit mode, and then the modern mode. Okay, so this is going to have the most presence and air around it because it's dealing also with low-level compression. A low-level compression is sort of compressing signals, by technical definition, signals that fall below a threshold and pull the gain upward. So it's the mirror image of what you get with normal downward compression, where when you pass above threshold, then the signal gain reduction pulls downward. For signals that pass above threshold, this actually does the opposite. So signals that fall below. How they integrate that, I'm not sure. I know in the TG12345 console, which is a VCA, and I'm not sure if there's some part of this which is emulating it. The threshold is actually is on everything. It's compressing everything all the time. And with the gain reduction meter that you see here, you'll find that there's quite heavy compression. So I'm going to start with the mix all the way up just so we can hear just the different versions of it. Just start with 50 to 1 and just leave it at the 3 setting, which is sort of a medium recovery time. So we've got fast, medium, all the way up to slow, which is in 6.
Part-time lovers, part-time friends. Think it's time we got full-time again. You went your way, and I went mine. Tripping slowly down the road, walking a line.
So you can hear the hard knee aggressive approach on the limit version of the Zener limiter, or the the Zener diode compressor, and so we got that on the original and the limit, but it's the hard knee that you hear pretty aggressively. So this is good, like if you want that real heavy pumping and breathing processing chain, say like on Room or Effects or anything like that with drums. This is kind of the way to go.
Part-time lovers, part-time friends. Think it's time we got full time.
So you hear all the variations of that there. If I go to the original, it's going to be a little less aggressive, a little softer.
Part-time lovers, part-time friends. Think it's time we got full-time.
But if you wanted to do something a little bit softer here, we could go to a 3 setting and then kind of pull the ratio down here and work our way up.
Part-time lovers, part-time friends. Think it's time we got full-time. You went your way, and I went mine. Tripping slowly down the road.
Or I could go with the more aggressive compression here and then use the mix control. So go a little bit heavier with the parallels. If I wanted to bring up a little more RMS energy, I could get a little bit heavier compression.
Part-time lovers, part-time friends. Think it's time we got full-time. You went your way, and I went mine. Tripping slowly down the road, walking a line. And all these cars are passing me by, and all these dreams they seem like a blur. Just like a blur.
So in that parallel mode, you notice that I went to the 6 to kind of slow to keep the compression a bit more consistent. That is usually a kind of a cool way of bringing up the overall RMS energy, keep everything sort of focused and steady, and then mixing in how much of it that you want. The modern one is a little bit trickier because the gain is a bit heavier and it's a VCA compressor, so it has a different sonic characteristic than the Zener diode does. But let's kind of play with this a little bit. So I'll start with it all the way up at 100%, and let's kind of play around with this a little bit.
Part-time lovers, part-time friends. Think it's time we got full-time. You went your way, and I went mine. Tripping slowly down the road, walking a line.
This could do an interesting thing here with this. It because of the low level processing that it sort of brings in, you end up with something that has a bit more presence in it. Again, I'm not sure exactly how they do that with the low level compression or factor that in, but you can see the gain reduction there is pretty heavy. So let's just focus this in a little bit and kind of bring in a little parallel here. See what this sounds like.
Part-time lovers, part-time friends. Think it's time we got full-time. You went your way, and I went mine. Tripping slowly down the road, walking a line. And all these cars are passing me by, and all these dreams they seem like a blur.
It brings like a nice, clarity and focus to everything. So again, here you wanted to do something a little bit lighter. We could slow this down, kind of keep it all and move the ratio down a bit more.
Part-time lovers, part-time friends. Think it's time we got full-time. You went your
The way to understand the recovery time with this, especially with mastering, is that, typically the faster the tempo or the faster the pace of the performance, sometimes you could have a slow tempo, but you could have a double time feel, or just the general feel as pace is much faster. Faster, you generally go with faster times and you get that breathing movement. This will bring out presence and punch. The slower you get, you'll notice that it will get progressively warmer. So if you have something that is thin and lacking body, then you want to go a bit to slower times to create the warming characteristics. Just notice that when I pull it through the different settings, even just a small amount of compression in the 10-to-1 ratio, I guess, whatever that means.
Part-time lovers, part-time friends. Biggest time we got full-time ways. You went your way, and I went mine. Tripping slowly down the road, walking a line. And all these cars are passing me by, and all these streets they
And then you can kind of figure out which one kind of works best for you. It's pretty cool. Now this doesn't even factor in using the filters here. So this is a high pass filter. So this will filter off low frequencies. So I don't see it as much with this, but with some things you may get if you have an excessive amount of low end, especially with more dance music, electronic dance music, and hip hop and stuff like that. That can eat up a lot of the movement of the compressor. It's not so much an active thing here with this particular audio example. But high frequency, low frequency, or accentuating a particular frequency. This is also good if you're working on just an audio track that's part of a mix, not the full mastering chain, more or less the way I'm demonstrating it here. That can actually be helpful to focus the compression to be more active, and that can help as well. It's an interesting characteristic that they have here where it's linear phase, and how that makes the compression and gain reduction a bit more responsive.
part-time lovers, part-time friends. Biggest time we got full-time ways. You went your way, and I went mine. Tripping slowly down the road, walking a line. And all these cars.
So that actually worked amazingly well to kind of make it breathe a bit more and move a bit more, especially at the faster release times. So that ends up being an important part. Maybe with the guitars and everything in there, that probably is a lot of sustained energy in the track to make it more responsive. Pretty amazing. Let's close this up here for a second and just go out to the output section real quick here, just to show off the spreader section. And let's just
Part-time lovers, part-time friends. Biggest time we got full-time ways. You went your way, and I went mine. Tripping slowly down the road, walking a line. And all these cars are passing me by, and all these streets they seem like a blur.
that's actually really cool. What I love about this mostly is just how transparent sounding it is. When you actually put this on and you just hear it, especially with the high frequencies, that's always a big tell to me, and the way that it works with the low frequencies as well. Just when you pop it in, just seems just like pristine and clear and open. That's like classic, everything that you want out of a mastering processor. Just brings in that air and presence just so cleanly and clearly. And this is a very interesting processor, this limiter. When you start playing around with it and working with it with the different settings here, there's loads of options in terms of character. Like if you want to bring grit and ballsiness into something, you can do that very easily. Having the parallel makes it work incredibly well for mastering. It's a very common processing technique in mastering. Having the MS capabilities on all of these, duo or stereo, with each module by module, and whatever components you end up using, any one of them, all of them, or none of them, or well, obviously you have to use something, even if you're just using the spreader. It really is a great new addition to the Abbey Road collection by Waves. Spectacular job on this. Really just always love Waves work, and this one is no exception. Also It's also great to know that this is upsampling. I'm not sure that they've done that with any of their other processors, so the fact that they've included this is a good sign going forward. And that's why it's Mixing with Mics. Plugin of the week, Waves TG Mastering Chain.